Welcome back to another episode of podcast. I am your host, Jessica Alla. And today's episode is the first episode in a series that I am doing called How I Healed. One of the most common questions that I get asked on social media is, how did you heal? How did you go through everything that you've been through and come out the other side? Like, what did you do? And this is actually why I created Triggered to Thriving, because I wanted to give people the tools, the roadmap, like the exact path. But on top of that, I do want to dive more deeply into a lot of these different subjects and parts that I had to work with, or different elements of my healing journey, to give you an understanding of what I actually did. So today's episode is how I healed dissociation. The real truth about dissociation that nobody tells trauma survivors is that it is the solution, not the problem. Dissociation is your body's solution to unimaginable pain, trauma, stress, panic. And it is your body's solution to, hey, we've been in fight or flight for too long. We actually can't exist like this anymore. We need to shut off and switch down. Dissociation is forced rest. It is your body saying, we need to check out because currently reality, life, what we're experiencing is too much for us to handle. Dissociation is not the problem. It is your body's solution. When I learned about what dissociation was, it was this light bulb moment, because a lot of my trauma healing journey, I didn't really know what a lot of these things were. There is so much more information now out there about terminology and all different, elements to trauma that just weren't there when I was 20, 21, 22 years old, when I was younger, starting to learn. And I remember learning about what dissociation was and thinking, I do that all the time. Wow, that's how I experience a lot of my life. And it was this really big light bulb moment for me. But I was that person who, and I tell you what I told you just before about it being a solution, not a problem, because I viewed it as a problem for far too long. I was so frustrated by my dissociation. I was so frustrated by the fact that it kept coming back no matter how much healing I was doing. And I know that so many of you will relate to this. It is one of the most common questions that I get is, how do I get rid of it? I hate dissociation. I hate the feeling. It's so frustrating. How do I heal it? Why does it keep coming back? And that was me. I was so frustrated every time I would notice that I would flick over into dissociation. I could feel it, and it took me a long time to actually even be able to register when it had happened. So I went from realizing that I had moved into dissociation sometimes days or even weeks after it had happened, to being able to register it within a few days, to be able to registering it within a day, to a few hours to minutes. So it took me a long time to build up that awareness and to heal, to realize and to be able to pinpoint what it was that had triggered me into dissociation. So sometimes it can just be that the level of chronic stress and trauma has just been too much, that the body has flicked a switch. But a lot of the time the body won't flick the switch unless there is something that has caused it to do that, which we will talk about a bit more in today's episode. When you feel dissociation, there is this feeling of powerlessness that comes with it, because it feels like you're stuck or you're frozen in time. It feels like you're in a dream. It feels like you don't have any control over your reality, especially if you're aware that you've been dissociated and you don't know how to move yourself out of it. It feels like you've lost all control, which essentially we have, because we've shut ourselves down for that purpose. But it starts to make you feel like you've lost your power. And a lot of the time this comes from the fact that we had to dissociate in a situation where we didn't have any power, where we didn't have any ability to escape or to run. Dissociation is also technically, if you think about it, we've got the different states of our nervous system, and fight or flight is when we would fight back if a trauma was happening to us and we were able to fight back or we were able to run, we would. Dissociation happens when we can't fight and we can't run and we freeze, because there is no way, whether the person who's hurting you is bigger or stronger, there's no way for you to escape. And what you learn is that the only way to get power, any sense of power back, is to leave your body, is to leave your consciousness, like take your consciousness out of your body and check out from reality, check out from what's currently happening. So it is a tangent of the freeze response, because when you freeze, like there's nowhere for you to go. And if what's happening is too much for the system to handle, your consciousness has to leave. And so there is this linked feeling with when we dissociate, we feel this level of powerlessness, because it's like, why did I leave my body again? Why can't I go back? And there's this feeling of wanting to be able to do what you couldn't do in those moments of trauma. You get to this point where once you're aware of the dissociation, it feels like protection and it feels like prison. Because when you're younger, dissociation feels the same way. It feels like protection in that you're protected from whatever's happening because it's not happening to you. The way that I like to describe it is that if I'm dissociated, I'm not me, and therefore what's happening, the awful thing that's happening, isn't happening to me. It's happening to Jess, and I'm not Jess. I'm someone else. I'm in the clouds right now. So it feels like it's protecting you, but it also feels like a prison, because at some point, whether it's in the moment of trauma or whether it's in your current life right now, you do have to come back into your human. You do have to come back into reality and into yourself and into who you are. And that's where you feel the weight again of everything that happened. Dissociation can feel like a prison as well, in that you want to stay there, but you don't want to stay there, because there's a part of us that wants to feel alive and awake and you really enjoy life, and you can't enjoy life when you're dissociated because you're not living it or you're somewhere else. And so it does become this pull between it feeling safe because you feel checked out and you feel like nothing matters because you're not you, and nothing matters to you because you're just kind of floating around out there. But also between being frustrated with that feeling and wanting to actually enjoy life and be in life. And when you do come back into life, all of that pain catches up with you and you go into fight or flight to try and escape it. And then you're triggered back into dissociation. And it just becomes this huge cycle of wanting to be alive and then not wanting to be alive as who you are. And this is where trauma comes into play, because it's like trauma healing comes into play, because the truth is you don't want to be alive as who you are, which is why so many people get suicidal, especially people who experience chronic dissociation, because it doesn't feel good to be who you are. So you actually have to start to change who you are. You actually have to start to heal your trauma so that when you come out of dissociation, you're not met with all of the panic and pain from all of those past experiences. So the idea for me is to use dissociation as a time to heal, use dissociation as a time to do that deeper work, so that when you come out of it, you're not met with everything that you tried to leave behind. Dissociation really affected my ability to love and to be able to be loved, because the person who was making me dissociate was the person who was supposed to love and protect me. So there was this feeling like I had to dissociate from the people that I loved the most because they were the most unsafe. But it also affected my ability, even if I'm being honest, which is hard to say, to love my children, because I didn't feel connected to them when I was dissociated. I felt like a zombie. I felt like I was living in a dream. And so I wasn't actually able to connect with them as a mother, as a human, because I was somewhere else. And so dissociation does affect very much your ability to communicate. And it depends on the level or the depth of your dissociation as well. Like, I know that there was times where I was a little bit dissociated, and there was times where I couldn't put a sentence together. I couldn't make a decision. Like, even the question of what should we have for dinner would be paralyzing, like just like I don't know, like like just couldn't make a decision, didn't have any any consciousness, didn't have any ability to think or to communicate. I had to stop a lot of my business because I couldn't make decisions, or I couldn't speak properly. I couldn't speak the way that I'm speaking to you now. I would know things logically, but I couldn't put them into sentences. I was just really, really foggy, really disconnected. What happens is when you need to use dissociation to disconnect from the people that you love because they don't feel safe, you feel more and more alone every time that you do that. And then you get to this point where nothing matters. And that's the scary point, when you're so dissociated and so disconnected from everybody that you just feel like everything that used to matter doesn't matter anymore. And that's when you start to lose hope. And this is why I say, and was one of those low moments for me when I was so dissociated. There were times where I almost felt like I was losing my mind, because it felt like, because nothing felt real, it felt like there was no consequences for my actions. And this is why, again, I understand sometimes suicidal people so much more, because they're actually not in their right mind. They actually don't, you can get so detached from reality that you actually don't really, nothing feels real. It really does feel like you're in a dream. So this was where I was lucky that I knew what was happening. I knew that I was dissociated. I knew that I was dissociating to protect myself. And I knew that I had to use that time to heal, so that when I came out of the dissociation, I'd be able to exist and to enjoy life. And so if you're listening and you are deeply dissociated, I would say, like, use this time to heal whilst you can still heal while you're in dissociation. It's a myth that you have to be, in it and struggling. Like, you can totally heal from that place as well. I remember my ex-husband at the time was my husband, and he didn't understand dissociation. He didn't understand trauma. He didn't understand what was happening. And I remember just really beating myself up, because he would be like, "What's wrong with you? Like, why can't you just make a decision? And like, you're not communicating properly, and why aren't you speaking properly? And you're always checked out and scattered," and, really being put down for those things. And I started to believe that those were things that were wrong with me. Like, why am I so scattered? Why can't I communicate? Why can't I make decisions? I need to work on this. What's wrong with me? But I would keep doing the same thing. And it was because of that dissociation. And I feel like having that understanding that was happening in order to protect me helped me to accept that that wasn't a part of who I was. It was just something that my body was doing, and something that was happening. It didn't mean that, and I remember him saying things to me like, you never finish things, or you don't complete things. And there were so many things that I was doing that were in line with dissociation that I thought meant something about me, but they didn't, because I can finish things, and I do finish things, and I can think straight now, and I can communicate well, and I'm very much alive and present and in the moment. It was the dissociation that was doing that. So just a reminder to you, like, don't attach your identity to the experience of dissociation, because it's what's happening. It's not who you are. The thing with dissociation is that it does cost you a lot of time that you can never get back. And the longer that we spend going in these cycles of fight or flight and dissociation, the more of our life that we're wasting, the more time that we're wasting. When I think back to those times that I was dissociated, I wasn't alive. Like, I was alive as in my heart was beating and I was breathing, but there was nothing else about me that was alive. I wasn't passionate. I wasn't loving. I didn't feel loved. I wasn't excited by anything. Everything was just nothing. Everything was blah. Everything was flat. And so I really feel like when we dissociate, we lose that time. But the way that I, again, feel like you can make it count is that you can use that time to heal, because it's the perfect time to start healing. If you're dissociated and you're checked out, use that time to start healing, and then it's not wasted time. It's healing time. But yeah, it really is. It's a hard one to feel. I think there is a lot of grief that comes with those with people who have experienced long-term trauma and long-term dissociation, especially chronic dissociation, there's this feeling of like, I lost so much time. Like I think back to chunks of time with my children that I don't remember, and not being present and not fully forming those memories. You're just kind of floating through, and so you do miss a lot of moments and a lot of time. And I think as well, part of healing is actually grieving that and realizing like trauma did kind of steal that from me. I didn't get to, I don't remember my kids young. I don't remember the things that we did. And yes, you have photos and videos and you know that you were there physically, but not mentally, not actually taking it in and enjoying it and experiencing it and feeling it. So you do grieve that a little bit, but you also have to get to the point where you move, it's an essential part of healing to grieve that, but you also can't live in that. You can't be the victim to that forever. And so then there's a point where you go, okay, that was awful and it was sad and I'm going to cry about it, but also I can't change it. And all I can do is start to heal now when I'm dissociated to move through that trauma so that in the future I can be alive, and in the future I can be present, and in the future I can fully experience everything. There's no point living forever in that feeling of everything that you missed, because you're missing right now if you're doing that. The moment that I realized that I couldn't live the way that I was living anymore with the chronic level of dissociation was when I hit that point that I spoke about before, where I realized that nothing mattered anymore. And I called this helpline and I said to this lady, like, everything that used to pull me out, everything that used to make me feel like, you can't end it all because of your children, or you can't stay like this dissociated because you want to be present, you want to, experience life with them. I got to this level of like intense panic and stress and just breakdown that I couldn't exist in that realm anymore, and I had to be dissociated all the time. But being dissociated all the time felt so lifeless that I just didn't want to be here anymore. And this moment and like calling this lady and speaking to her on this helpline, and just I remember feeling like everything that used to matter didn't matter anymore. And I really did feel like I was living in a dream, and like it probably wouldn't matter if I wasn't here because nothing was real anyway. And really, really deep level of, this is almost moving into like depersonalization, but it was this really intense chronic level of dissociation that I had this moment where I was like, you know what, like I need something needs to change. Something needs to change. Like if I'm still going into this deep level of dissociation, there's got to be something that's causing this. It's time to go deeper. It's time to work it out. And so I just started to go through those layers and started to look at what triggers me. What's my biggest trigger? Like what triggers me to move from, being alive and awake into this dissociative state? Like what's my main trigger? And at the time, my main trigger was my now ex-husband. And you can see how that ended. I think like actually looking at that time again as a healing time for me was what got me through, was not just accepting I am dissociated and I will always be dissociated and I'm always going to move through these circles and patterns, but actually using that time to start to heal, actually using that rock bottom as evidence that things really did need to change. Because we often use rock bottom as evidence that we're at rock bottom and we're like, this is the worst it's ever going to get and it's never going to get better. Whereas for me, I've always had this kind of mentality of like, okay, it's the worst it's ever going to get. How do I make it better? How do I change it? How do I get myself out of this? So starting to shift that mentality to like actually doing the work. When I first started really doing the deeper healing work around dissociation and learning how to come back into my body, it was so fucking uncomfortable. I remember I learned this technique, which is actually, I do this technique now in a recording that you can do if you are in Trigger to Thriving. So it's a recorded healing to come back into your body. So it's a way that we can connect in with our consciousness, and we can actually bring that consciousness back into our body, because dissociation is essentially consciousness your thoughts, your awareness leaving your body. And so this technique that I used was to bring my consciousness back into my body and to be in my body and to feel what it felt like being fully in my body. And I remember the first time I did the technique and I pulled my consciousness in, and the level of just fear, panic, but also discomfort that was in my body. Like, the only way I can describe it is that I had it was like my whole body was cramping and and everything was tensing up, and I just wanted to crawl out of my skin. It just felt awful being in my body. My body felt riddled with just tension and pain and just this uncomfortable feeling in every single cell. And I left my body again within minutes. And I got up from this meditation and realized that I was dissociated again. And it was this process of not just bringing my awareness constantly back into my body. It was also saying to myself, it's safe to stay in my body. It's safe to feel these feelings. And so when you look at dissociation and when you look at these grounding techniques, or you look at coming back into your body, and some of you may have experienced where you do meditations or you do grounding exercises and you come into your body and it feels awful and you hate it and then you leave again. The only way through this is that you, do keep coming back into your body, but you actually have to learn how to sit with the discomfort and the emotions and everything that comes up when you're in your body and work on it. Because if you just feel the discomfort and you go back into dissociation, you keep grounding yourself. Yes, there is a level of regulating your nervous system in that process, but essentially you're just continuing the cycle. You're making the cycle worse. You actually have to, when you come into your body and feel all of those emotions, somatically experience. This is where we talk about somatics. I would lay there and bring my consciousness into my body and I would feel like I wanted to scream, so I would scream into a pillow. I would feel like I wanted to run, I would feel like I just wanted to run away from everything in my life. So I'd put my runners on and I'd go for a run. Or I would feel this uncomfortableness in my hands and my arms. I remember they felt like they were cramping, so I would shake them. But then it would also started to tune into where is all of these feelings and pain and uncomfortableness coming from? And I would start to process the memories that were creating that trauma. So you can't, there's no hack for you to come back into your body and stay in your body and to not be dissociated without doing the work. It just doesn't exist. The only reason that you keep leaving your body and dissociating is because your body is such an uncomfortable place to be. So make your body a better place to be. Help your body to shift that energy, help your body to shift those emotions, help your body and your brain to forget those memories or to correctly process them so they can be moved on, so that your body is a nice place to be, so that you are a person that you want to exist as. Because if all your body is saying to you is everything's unsafe, and all your mind is saying to you is I'm shit and everything's shit and nothing's ever going to get better and I'm worthless and no one loves me, of course you're going to want to leave that. Of course you're going to want to check out from that. But if you're coming out of dissociation into a body that feels light and free and happy and everything feels like rainbows and sunshine and amazing, and you think I'm beautiful and I'm amazing and I'm loved and I've got so many people around me that love me, why would you want to check out from that? You wouldn't, which is why you don't dissociate in those situations. You're only dissociating because you're leaving something that you don't want to experience or feel or see. So many times I believed that I was too broken to heal. I went in this circle of this is too hard. Come back into your body, feel all the pain, do some layers of work, feel really good, dissociate again. Oh, why am I dissociated again? This is so frustrating. What's wrong with me? I'm never going to heal. I'm never going to be able to fix this. And down the rabbit hole I went into darkness again. And then it would be nope, there's got to be a little bit more. Pull myself back out, work on some more memories, do some more layers, and then I would feel a lot better. But then a month later, I would go into dissociation. And then same pattern. And it got to the point eventually where I did think this is just not going to work for me. Like there's always more coming back up. This is so frustrating. But I have this little part of me, this little voice in me that's like, no, just one more healing, just one more healing, just one more memory, just one more little investigation into whether there could be something else there. And that's honestly what got me through. And I always say to people, like, one bite at a time, one memory at a time, one little step at a time. If you're wanting to just heal it all in once and just have a quick fix and get rid of the dissociation once, from one healing, one, that's unrealistic. And two, the part of you that wants to do that is the part of you that just doesn't want to suffer anymore. That's like, I just can't deal with this. I can't deal with suffering. I can't handle it. That part needs to be worked with. You need to remove the beliefs of, I can't deal with this anymore. I can't handle any more suffering. It's never going to get better for me. I'm never going to heal. You need to be removing those subconsciously so that you have this like resilience and this grit to keep going through the layers, because it really does take those layers to work through. But eventually there is a point where, people say there's no end to healing. We're always healing. And yes, we're always discovering things about ourselves. We can always become better people. We can always find new beliefs and things like that. But there will come a point where uncovering those layers feels fun. There will come a point where it's like, ooh, that's interesting. What's triggered me there? And I'm going to go and journal on that and work through that. Not there's something wrong with me. I'm never going to get better. I may as well not be here and everything's awful and bad and blah, blah, blah. And we go down this darkness. You will find new layers, but you will be able to hold those new layers. And that's where I would say you're healed. When you can have things come up and it's very easy and effortless for you to work through those layers because they're so much smaller than the big things that you've dealt with. But it really does take this resilience, this almost taking it on as like a project. Instead of looking at it as like something's wrong with me, it's like, okay, I'm experiencing this thing. How do I work through the layers to fix it? And, when another layer arises, cool, now I'm going to do this one, and I'm going to keep going until I get to that source of dissociation and I fix it once and for all. The most surprising thing to me that I realized about myself, or even about life once I stopped dissociating, was probably, it sounds cliche, but just how incredible life actually is. And also this, like, I have this understanding and this awareness now, and I hope that you get this too, that the good and the bad will always coexist. And this ability to be able to hold the good and the bad, to be able to feel a little bit sad or heartbroken or a little bit of grief or guilt or rejection or whatever it is, and to be able to hold it and to feel it without checking out, without leaving, this realization of actually how strong I am, but also how smart my brain is and how smart our brains are to protect us with this dissociation. Because I remember learning that actually people who have chronic dissociation, and especially people who have chronic dissociation in childhood, and it creates, multiple personalities and things like that, where they actually compartmentalize the information using dissociation. It's actually what saved me. And it's probably what saved you too. Dissociation isn't, again, a problem. It's what saves you from unimaginable pain, from unimaginable, incomprehensible, trauma and feelings and things that you can't understand as a child. Dissociation saves you from that. And what it taught me is actually that my brain is functioning exactly as it should be, and so is yours. Because without dissociation, you have to relive, you have to be in that traumatic moment, and you have to relive it over and over and over if your brain didn't learn how to dissociate, and you're then constantly exposed to it. And these people end up actually statistically far worse than the people whose brains do dissociate and allow them to check out and allow them to have that rest and that reprieve from who they are essentially and from what happened to them. Dissociation and actually healing dissociation and coming out the other side of it made me realize that my brain is actually, I used to hate my brain. I used to be like, oh, stupid brain. it's dissociated, it's locked away all these repressed memories, and it's always in fight or flight, like stupid brain. But actually, if your brain is doing all of those things, it's actually doing exactly what it should be doing in order to protect you. It's just figuring out what it's protecting you from and healing those things so that it doesn't have to work so hard to do that anymore, so that your brain doesn't have to keep protecting you from something that happened a long time ago. And once we get the brain and the body to realize that, they can start to focus their jobs on other things. For instance, my brain and my body now focus on how can we receive more? How can we love more? How can we give more? How can we feel more alive? What can we do today that's going to make us feel alive and passionate and powerful and excited to be alive? You have energy to focus on that. And it's a whole different way of existing. It's an entirely different life. And so I'm grateful now to dissociation and to myself for dissociating for so many years in order to get me to where I am now. And I hope you can be grateful for that too one day for yourself, or that you can be grateful for that now, knowing that that's what it's doing for you. If you're feeling numb, you're feeling like you're in a dream, like you're gone, like you've left your body, what I need you to know right now, and what I really want you to know right now, is that this is the perfect time to start to look at why you need to keep leaving your body, why it isn't amazing being you. Because if you start to look at why it's not, why it's not good to be you, why it's not great to be you, and you start to journal on that, you're going to start to uncover the reasons that you dissociate, and you're going to start to actually really heal. Because again, until you figure out why you don't want to be you, why you need to leave your existence, your reality, your life, you're not going to be able to handle staying in the present moment. You're not going to be able to handle staying with yourself in your body. So I want you to know that healing is absolutely possible. And it will take some time, if you've had a lot of trauma, to reprogram yourself not to dissociate at the slightest of inconveniences, or to just dissociate out of habit, and to be really patient with yourself in that process. Definitely look into Trigger to Thriving, the way that we work with the body, the way that we work with safety and grounding you, and, the meditation even just to bring you back into your body over and over is going to help you to move through that dissociation. So as well as all of the journal prompts to help you to uncover why you're stuck and why you're moving into dissociation in the first place, it's going to really help you to understand who you are and why you are the way that you are, and to actually start to heal. So I highly recommend Trigger to Thriving, especially the first part of the series, Regulate, if dissociation is something that you are currently struggling with. And yeah, again, it's absolutely possible to heal. I've seen it not just with myself, but with hundreds, if not thousands of other women. So it is absolutely possible. If you know somebody who also struggles with dissociation, please send them this podcast episode. Don't forget to subscribe on whichever platform you're listening on. I'd love it if you left me a comment on this episode if you love this episode. And thank you again for listening. I will see you next time.